My husband held another woman's hand at his hospital's charity gala. When I asked him about it, he looked at me like I was a stranger and said, "You're embarrassing yourself. Maybe you should go home and calm down." So I did. And by the time he came home that night, I had already made 3 phone calls that would destroy everything he'd spent 15 years building. His career, his reputation, his precious image as the perfect surgeon with the perfect life. All of it. Let me tell you exactly how I got here. I'm a licensed architect at a mid-size firm in San Diego. I design hospitals actually, which is how I met my husband in the first place. He was the chief of orthopedic surgery at Coastal Memorial Medical Center, one of the biggest hospitals in Southern California. We met during a renovation project 8 years ago. He walked into my presentation wearing scrubs and that confident smile surgeons always have, asked 3 intelligent questions about the layout of the new surgical wing, and asked for my number before I'd even finished packing up my laptop. We got married 14 months later. Big wedding at the Hotel del Coronado. His parents flew in from Boston. My mother cried through the entire ceremony. Everyone said we were the perfect couple. The architect and the surgeon. Building things and fixing people. It sounded like a headline from one of those lifestyle magazines. For the first 5 years we were happy, really happy. We bought a house in La Jolla with an ocean view that made my heart stop every morning. We traveled to Italy, to Japan, to places I'd only seen in architecture books. He came to my firm's events. I went to his hospital galas. We talked about having kids someday, maybe when his schedule calmed down. Maybe when I made partner. But somewhere around year 6, things started changing in ways I couldn't quite name. My husband stopped asking about my projects. The man who used to study my blueprints over dinner, who genuinely wanted to understand what I did, started checking his phone mid-sentence when I talked about work. Our conversations became logistics. Who's picking up groceries? Did you schedule the plumber? I'll be late tonight, don't wait up. I told myself it was normal. He was chief of surgery now. The pressure was immense. People's lives literally depended on him. I couldn't expect butterflies and deep conversations after 7 years of marriage. But then came the phone. My husband had never been secretive about his phone before. He'd leave it on the kitchen counter while he showered. Hand it to me if I needed to look something up. Once he even asked me to read his texts out loud while he was driving because he was expecting something from the hospital. Then one morning in early March, I noticed his phone face down on his nightstand. Not just set down casually. Positioned deliberately so the screen wasn't visible. When I picked it up to check something, it was locked with a passcode I didn't recognize. New hospital policy, he said when I asked. HIPAA compliance. They're making everyone use stronger security because of patient data. It sounded reasonable. Everything my husband said always sounded reasonable. That's what made him a good surgeon. He could explain anything in a way that made you feel foolish for questioning it. But then I started noticing patterns. Tuesday and Thursday nights became consistently late. Around 6 o'clock, my phone would buzz with a text. Emergency surgery, don't wait up. No details about what kind of emergency. No invitation for me to bring him dinner at the hospital like I used to. He'd come home around 11 smelling like antiseptic soap and something else. Something floral and expensive that definitely wasn't hospital issue. I suggested joining him for lunch one day. We were eating breakfast. One of the rare mornings he wasn't already gone by the time I woke up. Maybe I could bring you lunch today. We haven't done that in months. He didn't look up from his phone. That's not a good idea. The OR schedule is packed. I won't have time to sit down. I could just drop it off. 5 minutes. It's really not a good time. So I dropped it. But I didn't stop paying attention. The names started appearing in late March. Amber. Just casually at first. Amber from the surgical team handled the post-op beautifully today. Or Amber suggested a new approach to the Morrison case. Normal work conversation. Colleagues talk about colleagues. But by early April, her name was everywhere. Amber thinks we should update the surgical protocols. Amber had this great idea for the fundraiser. Amber really understands the pressure of this job. She gets it. I counted 1 week. 14 mentions of her name in 7 days. 14 times, my husband's voice brightened when he talked about someone who wasn't me. 14 times, I felt something cold settle in my chest that I tried to ignore. One evening I walked into the living room and found him on the couch grinning at his phone. When he heard my footsteps, he locked the screen so fast he nearly dropped it. "Who are you texting?" "Just the surgical group chat. Someone posted something funny about the new resident. Can I see?" His expression changed. "Why? Don't you trust me?" And there it was. Suddenly I was the problem. Not his secrecy. Not the locked phone. Not the name he mentioned more than mine. Me, for noticing. Me, for asking questions. I tried bringing up Amber directly once. We were eating dinner, takeout from the Thai place because neither of us cooked anymore, and I said it as casually as I could. "This Amber you mention a lot. How long has she been at the hospital?" My husband's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Why do you want to know?" "Just curious. You talk about her quite a bit. She's a colleague. A surgical nurse." "Why are you interrogating me?" "I'm not interrogating. It's a simple question." "It doesn't feel simple. It feels like you're keeping tabs on me." My face went hot. "I'm just trying to understand why you mention one specific coworker 14 times in a week." He stared at me. "Are you counting? That's not healthy behavior." And just like that, I was the crazy wife. The paranoid spouse who counted mentions and questioned innocent work friendships. Not the woman whose husband had completely changed over the past 6 months. Not the partner who'd found a receipt for 2 dinners at a restaurant in the Gaslamp Quarter on a night he claimed he was in surgery. I stopped asking questions. But I started documenting everything. The hospital's spring charity gala was scheduled for the second Saturday in May. My husband had attended alone the past 2 years, claiming it was boring, that I wouldn't enjoy the speeches and the small talk with donors. But this year, 3 weeks before the event, he came home actually enthusiastic. "You should come to the gala this year. It's at the Pendry downtown. Great networking opportunity for your firm. A lot of board members have construction projects." I should have seen the red flag. But I was so desperate for any sign that he still wanted me around, that I still mattered, that our marriage wasn't completely dying. I ignored every instinct screaming that something was wrong. "That sounds nice," I said, trying not to sound too eager. "I'd love to." I bought a new dress that weekend. Navy blue, elegant, the kind that used to make my husband tell me I was beautiful. I got my hair done. Bought shoes that cost more than my monthly car payment. The night of the gala, my husband said he needed to stop by the hospital first. "Quick thing with a patient. You should just meet me there. I'll text you when I arrive." I drove to the Pendry alone. Parked in the garage. Walked into the ballroom by myself, clutching my purse, scanning the crowd for my husband's face. The venue was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, waiters circulating with champagne. San Diego's medical elite in their finest, networking and laughing and pretending their donations were about charity rather than tax deductions. I texted my husband, "I'm here. Where are you?" No response. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. I stood near the silent auction tables, pretending to be interested in a weekend getaway to Napa Valley, feeling increasingly foolish in my expensive dress. Then I spotted him across the room. He'd arrived without telling me. Without looking for me. Without any acknowledgement that his wife was standing alone at an event he'd insisted we attend together. And he wasn't alone. She was younger than I expected. Maybe 28, 29 at most. Auburn hair that caught the chandelier light perfectly. Wearing a green dress that walked the line between professional and provocative. The kind of dress that said she knew exactly what effect she was having. But it wasn't her appearance that made my stomach drop. It was the way my husband was looking at her. He was leaning in when she spoke, his body angled toward hers, giving her his complete attention. She said something and he laughed. Not the polite chuckle he gave me anymore. A real laugh. The laugh I used to make him do before everything got cold. Her hand was on his forearm. I watched it rest there for several seconds before sliding away. Then a minute later, it was on his shoulder. Then his back. Every touch casual but deliberate. Every moment intimate in a way that made other people notice. I saw 2 nurses I recognized exchange glances, then look at me with something like pity. A colleague of my husband's, a cardiologist named Dr. Patterson, who I'd met at previous events, positioned himself between me and the view of my husband. Started asking about my work, my projects, filling the silence with conversation that felt like kindness and humiliation at the same time. After 20 minutes of this, I made a decision. I grabbed 2 glasses of champagne and walked straight toward them. She saw me first. Her eyes flickered with something that might have been annoyance before her expression smoothed into professional politeness. "There you are," my husband said, taking the champagne without thanking me, without making eye contact. "This is Amber from the surgical team." "Amber, this is my wife. Not this is the woman I love or even this is my wife, the architect. Just my wife." A category, a title. Something he was obligated to acknowledge rather than someone he was proud to introduce. I tried to join their conversation. Over the next hour, I attempted multiple times to be part of whatever they were discussing. Each time, my husband talked over me or Amber pivoted to some inside joke about the hospital. About difficult surgeries they'd shared. About the new chief resident who couldn't find a vein. Things deliberately designed to exclude me. When I mentioned that I was working on a new hospital project in Oceanside, my husband actually sighed, audibly, like I was a child interrupting adult conversation. Amber touched his arm and whispered something. He grinned and whispered something back. She laughed, her hand lingering on his sleeve. I stood there invisible, irrelevant. Finally, I said quietly, "I'd like to leave. I have a headache." My husband looked at me like I'd announced I was setting the building on fire. "We just got here. We've been here almost 2 hours. I've been here almost 2 hours. You've been here maybe 90 minutes, and you've spent all of it with her." His jaw tightened. "You're embarrassing yourself. Maybe you should go home and calm down. We can talk about this later. When you're being rational." The words hit me like ice water. Even Amber's eyes widened slightly. Dr. Patterson, standing nearby, suddenly became very interested in his phone. I looked at my husband, really looked at him. At this stranger wearing the face of the man I'd married. The man who'd once studied my blueprints over dinner. The man who'd promised to build a life with me. "You know what?" I said, setting my champagne glass down with deliberate care. "You're absolutely right. I should go home." I turned and walked straight toward the exit. I didn't cry in the parking garage. Didn't cry on the drive home. Just drove in complete silence through the Saturday night streets of downtown San Diego, past the tourists and the bar hoppers and the couples holding hands on their way to dinner. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, staring at the front door, understanding that everything was about to change. What my husband didn't know, what he'd never bothered to notice because he was too distracted by Amber, was that I'd been documenting everything for a month. It started with a credit card charge. $340 at a restaurant I'd never heard of. George's at the Cove. An expensive place in La Jolla. The date was a Tuesday in mid-April. One of those nights he'd texted that he had emergency surgery. I'd screenshotted it, filed it away in a folder on my phone labeled receipts because that sounded mundane enough that my husband would never question it. Then came another charge. The Lafayette Hotel. $422. Also on a Tuesday. Someone had rented a room. I'd found the actual receipt in his jacket pocket when I was taking it to the dry cleaner. Checked out at midnight on a night he'd come home smelling like floral perfume and claimed he was exhausted from a complicated surgery. I photographed everything. Created a spreadsheet with dates, locations, amounts. Architect brain taking over, organizing evidence into something clear and undeniable. 2 weeks before the gala, I'd hired a private investigator. Her name was Sandra Chen. She had an office in Mission Valley, professional credentials on the wall, and a direct approach that I appreciated. "I'll have a preliminary report in 5 days," she'd said. 5 days later, she'd emailed me a PDF that confirmed everything I'd suspected. My husband and Amber had been sleeping together for 2 months. Every Tuesday evening was the Lafayette Hotel in North Park. Every Thursday was drinks at her apartment in Hillcrest, a modern complex where Sandra had photographed them entering together at 7 and not leaving until after 11. There were photos of them at restaurants, at hotel entrances, of my husband's hand on her lower back, of them kissing in his car before driving to separate locations. I'd closed the PDF and sat in my home office for an hour, just breathing. But I hadn't confronted him. Something told me to wait. To be strategic instead of emotional. The morning of the gala, I'd consulted with a divorce attorney named Victoria Reyes. She had an office in downtown with a view of the harbor and a reputation for being ruthless. "The person who files first controls the narrative," she'd said. "The person who's prepared wins." I'd hired her on the spot. She drafted divorce papers that afternoon but didn't file them yet. I told her I needed one more piece of evidence. Something public that would prevent my husband from spinning this as my paranoia. Those papers were sitting in my car right now. Inside the house, I didn't turn on the overhead lights. Just poured myself a large glass of the expensive wine we'd been saving for our anniversary and sat at the kitchen island. My phone was buzzing constantly. I ignored it for 20 minutes, then finally looked. 18 messages from my husband. What was that about? You made a scene. People are asking where you went. This is embarrassing. Answer your phone. Fine. Ignore me. But you humiliated us both tonight. Then, around message 15, the tone shifted to something resembling concern. Are you home? Just let me know you're okay. I'm leaving now. We need to talk. Not once did he apologize. Not once did he acknowledge what he'd said or how he'd said it. I set the phone down and opened my laptop. At 11:47 p.m., I sent an email to the hospital's HR department. Attached was everything. Sandra's photographs. The hotel receipts. The restaurant charges. A formal complaint citing the hospital's strict anti-fraternization policy. My husband was a department chief. Amber reported to him indirectly through the surgical team structure. The relationship wasn't just inappropriate. It was a terminable offense. At 11:52 p.m., I forwarded the same documentation to the hospital's chief medical officer, who I'd met at 3 previous galas and who had always seemed like a reasonable person. At 11:58 p.m., I texted Victoria Reyes. File first thing, Monday morning. Serve him at the hospital during his morning rounds. Her response came back immediately. Consider it done. I heard my husband's car pull into the driveway around midnight. Heard the door slam. Heard his footsteps pause in the entryway, probably surprised that the house was mostly dark. He found me in the kitchen, sitting at the island with my wine glass, my laptop closed in front of me. Hey, he said carefully. You okay? I took a sip of wine. Let the silence stretch. I'm fine. Look, about tonight. That got out of hand. Work has been stressful and I took it out on you. I shouldn't have said what I said. It wasn't an apology. It was blame shifting wrapped in apologetic language. You told me to go home and calm down while you held another woman's hand in front of everyone we know, I said evenly. So I did. What's the problem? His face flushed. I wasn't holding her hand. We were having a professional conversation. You're twisting everything. Am I? This jealousy thing is becoming a problem. Healthy marriages require trust. I almost laughed. The audacity of him standing there smelling like Amber's perfume, lecturing me about trust. Trust is earned, I said quietly. Not demanded. He opened his mouth to respond, then stopped. Something in my expression must have told him that his usual tactics weren't going to work tonight. I'm going to bed, he said finally. We can talk about this tomorrow when you've had time to calm down. He went upstairs. I heard the shower turn on. Heard him moving around the bedroom. I stayed in the kitchen, finishing my wine, feeling nothing except cold, clear certainty about what was coming. Monday morning at 9:14 a.m., Victoria texted, papers served. He was in the middle of rounds with 3 residents. Everyone saw. I read the message while sitting at my desk at work, pretending to review blueprints. At 9:23 a.m., my phone started ringing. My husband's name. I sent it to voicemail. It rang again. Voicemail. By noon, I had 23 missed calls and a voicemail box full of messages that progressed from angry to panic to desperate. What have you done? Do you understand what you've done? Everyone saw that. Everyone. I'm the chief of surgery and you had me serve divorce papers in front of my residents. My phone is blowing up. The chief medical officer wants to meet with me. Amber's been called to HR. Call me back. Please. We can fix this. By 2 p.m., Dr. Patterson texted me from a number I didn't recognize. Your husband and Amber were both just escorted off the floor. Suspension pending investigation. The hospital is in chaos. By 5 p.m., Victoria called. HR concluded their preliminary investigation. They had no choice once they saw the photographs and the hotel receipts. They're both being terminated for violation of the anti-fraternization policy. Effective immediately. I thanked her and hung up. That evening, I had a locksmith change every lock on the house. Packed my husband's clothes into garbage bags and left them on the front porch with a note. You can collect these by Wednesday. After that, Goodwill. He showed up around 8, tried his key, found it didn't work. Started knocking, then pounding, then shouting my name loud enough that our neighbor came out onto their porch. I opened the door with the security chain latched. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "This is my house. My attorney filed for exclusive use of the property. You're trespassing. You can't do this. This is insane. You destroyed my career over nothing." "I destroyed your career? You had an affair for 2 months. You humiliated me at a public event. You told me to go home and calm down while you flirted with your mistress. And now you want to blame me for the consequences? It was a mistake. One mistake. We can work through this. Your stuff is on the porch. Take it and leave." I closed the door. He stood outside for 20 minutes, alternating between pleading and threatening. Eventually, I heard him loading the garbage bags into his car. Heard him drive away. The divorce took 4 months. My husband didn't fight anything. Signed every document Victoria put in front of him. He'd moved to Phoenix, taken a position at a smaller hospital at significantly lower pay. His reputation in San Diego was destroyed. Amber left California entirely. Moved back to Texas, according to mutual acquaintances. Working at a clinic in Austin. Trying to rebuild a career that had imploded spectacularly. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into her at a coffee shop in North Park. She'd apparently come back to collect the last of her belongings from storage. She looked different, thinner. Tired. The confident woman from the gala was gone. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. "Please. Just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I agreed. "I wanted to apologize," she said, hands wrapped around her coffee cup. "I didn't know he was lying. He told me you had an arrangement. That the marriage was over. That you both dated other people." I stared at her. "You thought I was okay with it? Even at the gala, when I was standing right there watching you touch him?" Her face crumbled. "He said you had an understanding. He was so convincing. He had explanations for everything. He's a surgeon. Being convincing is literally his job." She started crying. "I lost everything. My career, my apartment, my reputation. I had to move back in with my parents at 29 years old." I felt nothing watching her cry. "Then you made your choices," I said. "And choices have consequences." I stood up to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, he would have done this to you eventually. Men who cheat don't suddenly become faithful just because they've upgraded. If you'd ended up together, you would have been me in 5 years." I walked out without waiting for her response. A year after the divorce, I renovated the house. Stripped out everything that reminded me of my marriage and rebuilt it into something that was entirely mine. New colors, new furniture, new energy. I got promoted to partner at my firm. Started hiking again on weekends. Adopted a rescue dog named Atlas who greets me at the door every evening like I'm the most important person in the world. I started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but coffee dates with interesting people, dinners with colleagues who became something more. The slow process of learning what I actually wanted without filtering it through someone else's expectations. Last month, my ex-husband sent me a text from a new number. "I've been thinking about you. About us. I made terrible mistakes and I'm in therapy now. I understand what I threw away. Is there any chance we could talk? I'm not asking you to take me back. I just miss you." I read it 3 times, waiting for some feeling to surface. Anger. Satisfaction. Grief. Nothing. Just recognition that this person used to matter to me and now he didn't. I blocked the number without responding. And that's when I knew I'd actually moved on. Not because I'd stopped being angry. That happened months ago. But because his attempt to re-enter my life didn't even register as important. He'd become irrelevant. A chapter that was finished. A mistake I'd learned from. Sometimes I think about that moment at the gala when my husband told me to go home and calm down. He meant it as a dismissal. A power play. A way to put me in my place while he continued his affair in plain sight. He had no idea he was giving me permission to leave a marriage that had been dying for years. Going home wasn't the punishment he thought he was delivering. It was the escape route I didn't know I needed. He told me to calm down, so I did. I got very calm. Calm enough to file HR complaints and divorce papers and change the locks on our house while he was still trying to figure out why his key didn't work. And I built a life so much better than the one I left behind that I never once looked back. If this story kept you watching until the very end, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when the divorce papers got served during morning rounds in front of all his residents. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story from the concealed bonds.